I don't know if you'll believe me, but after what happened, I've barely been able to sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that sound again. The grinding, the child's laugh. I don't want to remember it, but it's stuck with me, and maybe sharing it will make me feel less insane. That's how the message started. She told me she's been working at a mid-sized marketing company in Chicago for a few years now, always on the night shift. She wasn't the only one in the office at first, but over time, budgets were cut, people quit, and soon it was just her most nights after 10 p.m. She liked it that way. It was peaceful, quiet. Her office was on the 8th floor, and the building was old. The kind of old where the elevators had those brass buttons with numbers worn smooth from years of use. The walls inside were wood-paneled, with a thin strip of mirror at eye level. The doors made that slow, heavy closing sound, and the ride always rattled slightly. She said she'd gotten used to the feeling of being alone there at night. The security guard downstairs barely looked up from his phone when she came in, and by midnight it was just her, the hum of the vending machine, and the occasional creak from the building settling. But this night was different. It was a Friday in November. Outside, the wind howled between the narrow spaces of downtown, making the windows hum faintly. She'd stayed later than usual, finishing up a report that her boss wanted by Monday morning. When she finally glanced at the clock, it was 1:57 a.m. She laughed at herself, packed her bag, and shut off her computer. The hallway lights on her floor were already dim for the night. Only every other light stayed on after midnight, so patches of the hall were swallowed in shadow. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward the elevator. She hit the button and the doors slid open immediately. Inside, the light was off. Not completely dark, but dimmer than it should have been. The fluorescent bulb flickered faintly, humming like it was struggling to stay alive. She stepped in, pressed L for lobby, and leaned against the side rail, yawning. The doors closed. She waited for that slight drop in her stomach as the elevator began moving down. But instead, she felt it move up. Her eyes darted to the floor display above the door. It blinked from 8 to 9. That was strange because, and she was certain about this, her building only had 8 floors. There was no 9th. The elevator slowed to a stop. The grinding sound was louder now, echoing in the small space. The doors opened. She expected to see a dark shaft wall, maybe a maintenance area. Instead, she saw a hallway. It was shaped exactly like the ones on the other floors, but it was wrong. The carpet was the same pattern, but faded almost to gray, with dark stains in random spots. The walls were off-white, but peeling like old wallpaper, and the ceiling lights buzzed softly, some flickering, others completely dead. She didn't step out. She leaned forward slightly, peering into the dim hallway. That's when she noticed the smell, damp, moldy, like wet concrete, and underneath it, something metallic. Her heart started to beat faster. She called out, "Hello!" Her voice sounded too loud, bouncing off the narrow walls. And then she heard it, a faint laugh, high-pitched, definitely a child's voice. But it wasn't playful. It was the kind of laugh where every note sounded wrong, like it was mocking her. Her breath caught in her throat. She stared into the shadows at the far end of the hall. Something moved, just a quick shift of darkness. A thin figure stepping partly into the light, then retreating again. She could have sworn its head was tilted unnaturally far to one side. She spun back to the elevator panel and started pressing lobby again. The button didn't light up. She pressed every button she could reach, but nothing happened. The doors stayed open. That's when the figure moved again. Only this time, it didn't retreat. It began walking toward her. Bare feet slapped the faded carpet. The sound was slow, but the distance between steps felt wrong, like the legs were too long. She caught a glimpse under the flickering light, skin so pale it almost looked gray, arms hanging too low, hands dragging along the walls as it came closer. Her pulse roared in her ears. She slammed both palms against the close door button. The doors began sliding shut, slowly, painfully slowly, and she was sure they would close before it reached her. But as the gap narrowed, she saw the figure speed up. Not running, just gliding, like it wasn't touching the ground at all. The last thing she saw before the doors shut completely was its mouth. Wide, too wide, filled with teeth that didn't look human. The elevator jolted violently and she felt her stomach drop as it began descending fast. Her ears popped. The display flickered through random numbers. 7, 5, 8, 2, before finally stopping on 6. The doors opened and she bolted out, nearly tripping over her own feet. She didn't wait for the stairs. She ran for them, throwing herself down flight after flight until she reached the lobby. The security guard looked up from his phone just in time to see her shove the front door open and stumble into the cold night air. The next day, she asked him if the building had a 9th floor, maybe for storage or maintenance. He frowned and told her there had never been one. She checked old blueprints online later that week. They showed only 8 floors. She doesn't work late anymore. She takes the stairs whenever she can. And here's the part that stuck with me most. She says that every so often, when she's near an elevator, she hears that same faint laugh again, and she can feel someone standing just behind her. I work maintenance in one of those fancy high-rise apartment buildings in Manhattan. Expensive place. Designer furniture in the lobby, 24/7 concierge, residents that pay more in a month than I make in half a year. I've seen a lot of weird stuff in my line of work, but nothing like this. And I'm telling you, if I could forget it, I would. That's how he started. He said the building was just over 3 years old. Brand new, modern everything. The elevator was one of the nicest he'd ever seen. Stainless steel walls, so polished you could see your reflection. LED lights overhead that never flickered, and a ride so smooth you couldn't even feel the movement. It was the kind of elevator that didn't seem like it could ever have problems. But about 6 months after he started working there, residents began complaining. Not about the ride or the buttons or the speed, about the mirror. They said that sometimes late at night, when the elevator was empty, they'd see something in the reflection that wasn't there in real life. Some people claimed it was a shadowy figure. Others said it was a woman. But all of them described the same detail: long black hair covering her face. At first, he laughed it off. Residents in expensive places like that sometimes made strange complaints just to feel important. He even joked about it with the night concierge. That was before the night the elevator trapped him. It was a Thursday, around 1:30 in the morning. He was doing his final walkthrough before going home, checking emergency stairwells, making sure no doors were propped open, the usual. He took the elevator up to the 10th floor to inspect one of the hall lights that had been reported flickering. The light was fine. He stepped back into the elevator to head down to the lobby. Halfway down, the elevator jolted. Hard. It was the kind of movement that throws your balance off and makes your stomach lurch. The lights went out completely for a few seconds. When they came back, the regular bright LEDs were gone, replaced by the dim red glow of the emergency lighting. He said the shift in light changed everything. The reflections in the mirror seemed darker, like they reached farther back than the small space of the elevator. His own reflection looked a little off. His skin tone in the mirror was paler, and his eyes looked sunken. Then he saw her, standing just behind him in the reflection, head down, hair draped forward like a curtain. She wasn't moving. He whipped around. No one there. Just the empty elevator. His skin prickled, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it. He looked back at the mirror, and she was closer. Still not moving. Still in the reflection only. Then his radio crackled to life in his pocket. But instead of hearing his co-worker's voice, a low, distorted whisper came through. Just 4 words. Don't turn around again. The air felt heavy, humid, like it was pressing down on him. The elevator started moving, but not toward the lobby. It went down. Past the lobby, past the basement. The digital display above the doors stopped showing numbers. It was just a glowing red dash. When the doors finally slid open, there was nothing but darkness beyond. He couldn't even see the edges of a hallway or a floor, but the smell hit him instantly. Damp, rotten, and something else. Something sweet and sickening, like decaying flowers. He looked at the mirror. The woman in the reflection moved for the first time. She lifted her head slightly, just enough to reveal her mouth. She was smiling. Not a normal smile. It was too wide, teeth too sharp, like they didn't belong to a human at all. Her hands came up in the reflection, pressing against the inside of the mirror, leaving smears that didn't exist on the real steel wall. And then, without stepping, she was suddenly closer, like she jumped forward in the reflection. The elevator doors slammed shut on their own. The whole cab shuddered violently as it rose back up. He stumbled into the corner, gripping the rail until it stopped. When the doors opened at the lobby, the normal bright lights were back. The mirror looked completely normal. He didn't say a word to the concierge, just walked out into the cold night air, trying to convince himself it hadn't happened. The next day, the building manager had the mirror removed and replaced with plain steel. But he swears every now and then, when he's alone in an elevator, he'll see a faint, greasy handprint appear in the reflection for just a moment before fading away. And here's the part that still makes him shake. In that 1 second before it disappears, the hand is on the inside of the glass.